Welcome back to Booked and Broken. I'm Diego Wiener with my boy Alfredo Rubio, talking about Miami, some legal stuff, although we really probably are going to completely get off topic and end up talking about the best Cuban restaurants, the best Cuban coffee, and my unsolicited opinion on all of that. But thanks for joining us again. This is episode number 2.
Yep.
All right, man. So let's talk. So we were talking about what people might find interesting in real cases. It's really important that we keep in mind that, at least while someone's going through the criminal justice system, she's presumed innocent. And I don't say it just because it's something you got to say. She's presumed innocent, period.
100%.
Now, in preparation for this segment, we looked at a lot of these videos, man, and it's brutal. I mean, you spend your day looking at car crashes, man. Did you see that crash?
Dude, it was crazy. So for those who haven't seen it, she's takes the red light and crashes into 2 cars.
Allegedly.
There is a white car in the video that is seen.
We don't know who was driving.
Yeah, but the car is seen taking a red light and crashing into 2 cars, ultimately kills 2 people, injures a third. So pretty significant stuff here.
Yeah.
I think she's, from what I read online, she's like a self-proclaimed Instagram model, if you will. Obviously, this would be life-changing, whether or not a jury finds her guilty or not guilty. Still a life-changing event for anybody involved.
And I think one of those things is, like we talk about consequences.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, hey, if I have a couple of drinks, I'll drive. But what are the consequences of something like a DUI or of driving while intoxicated? And I think when I talk to, every now and then we'll give talks at like high school, at a college, something like that. And often, you ask the class and you're like, hey, what do you think the consequences are of drunk driving? And usually they'll be like, oh, well, duh, you get arrested, or duh, you do this. But I don't think a lot of people, especially young people, understand the level of not only, could you kill somebody else or could you kill yourself? But let's say, even if hopefully that none of that ever happens, I mean, you're looking at serious possible prison time. And I don't care how good your lawyer is, or, you are going to be facing a potential sentence. Yeah. And, we talk about when you have a crash and you have alcohol, I mean, from a consequences situation, I mean, we're looking at significantly aggravated charges when there's a crash.
Right.
At least from my perspective. And, my wheels start to turn as far as, okay, well, who was hurt? What's the level of damage? What are the aggravating circumstances? And the person tried to leave the scene or not? In this particular case, she's accused of trying to leave the scene. Right. I think she was stopped before she left, allegedly by bystanders.
There's surveillance that shows, and it's interesting. I saw a bit of the video, and the surveillance, all I really saw was someone in like a hoodie walking away from the scene. Now, whether it's her, someone else, or involved, that's what they have. And I don't know if you saw this part, but with the DUI in this particular case, it is in the articles that you read and reading up on it are saying that she blamed pink cocaine, which a lot of people call it Tuesday, and that's a mix of a bunch of things. So I guess from your perspective, if she were to speak to officers or make a statement like, oh, blame it on pink cocaine, I can't imagine that much helps your case if you're blaming it on a substance.
Hell no. And listen, I haven't read her A form, for example.
Right.
But if that is in fact the case, let's say someone, and this is why when we talk about don't make statements, it's so important, man. And people, you keep hearing the advice and you hear, lawyers on Instagram, me, for example, saying, hey, don't talk to the cops, don't talk to the cops. We sound like a broken record. But the minute something like this happens and someone, I don't know, for some godforsaken reason decides to say, oh, it's because I did this.
Right.
As if somehow that's going to ameliorate or make the situation better, when we all know, you're just admitted to taking an intoxicating substance. And you best believe that if she made that admission, it's going to be in the arrest report. There's going to be police officers that testify it. And I'm going to guess they're probably wearing body cam footage too. And guess where that's all going to be played?
Of course.
Right in front of a jury of her peers. So, when we talk about keeping your mouth shut and why it's so important, that's what it comes down to, man. Like how, you're talking about, oh, I just had a little bit of cocaine. That's what happened.
Right.
It's just...
Well, pink cocaine. It's better than it's pink. It's Tuesday.
Excuse me.
I mean, and piggybacking on that, right? Obviously, you've always said, look, don't talk to the cops, call a lawyer, call a lawyer, call a lawyer. You've preached this day in and day out. But a question that I have for you in this scenario, let's say it was her or anybody, whoever was driving the vehicle, if they did this, they admit they're on pink cocaine, which obviously makes it even worse. How much worse does this get from your perspective by walking away?
Yeah, it never helps,
Right.
you know, and I know, you know, some people might say, oh, well, if you walk away, maybe they won't catch you. When you walk away from the scene of the crime or from a scene of a crash, excuse me, because, you know, you don't know if it's a crime until they prove that it's a crime,
Right.
you aggravate the situation. And if there's alcohol involved, there are additional aggravators. So when we're talking about what can happen, further consequences, right? And, you know, and unfortunately, the reality is the jury is going to hear, you know, not only are they going to hear the government's theory that you caused this accident that resulted in the death of two people, but rather than, you know, calling the cops, rather than calling EMS, what'd you do? You let get away. Yeah. So it never looks good, in my opinion, just from an optics perspective, and also from, you know, the doing the right thing perspective. Like, we're all human beings, you know. Like, let's say in your world, you know, whether it's PI, I mean, I assume there's got to be some kind of benefit for someone that tries to help and tries to call the authorities and tries to do all that, rather than, you know, leaving a car that's registered in their name with their license potentially in there. You never know. So what, you know, does it from a civil perspective? Because you know there's going to be a civil case here.
I mean, yeah, you have the two wrongful death cases that people are going to file suit against, and then you're going to have the third person that's injured, and everybody's going to make a claim here.
Mm-hmm.
How much coverage is available? I don't know. I'm not the one handling.
I guess it'll depend on how heavy duty of an influencer she is,
right?
Whether it's self-proclaimed or a real influencer.
And even then, it's surprising, right? Like if she does have, if she is an influencer that makes, or whatever she does, she has a lot of income. Mm-hmm. Of course, they can go after her income aside from just the insurance. But from a car accident scene, walking away or not, it never looks good. And it puts kind of like almost punitive damages on you for walking away and doing the wrong thing in a sense, or doing something illegal, which you shouldn't be walking away from the scene anyways. And that'll be used against you. And then on top of that, it's an optics thing, right? Mm-hmm. So what's a jury going to see if that civil case now goes to trial? Not only are you seen as being liable for the accident, but then you walked away. Yeah. So as you said, we're human. And from a human perspective, which is what a jury is, they're going to see you and going, yeah, I can't believe you freaking walked away after you hurt someone. And they're only going to punish you more for it. So, you know, try to help people make mistakes when it's a regular car accident. It is what it is. You made a mistake. Hopefully nobody died. Hopefully you weren't on any sort of drug or alcohol or anything of that nature. And it's simple as that, right? An incident that occurred, cars crashed into each other, and you can just handle it that way. And someone like you doesn't have to be involved because you didn't do anything criminal. But yeah, it doesn't help. This would be a potentially big case, but the worst part is 2 people died. Yeah, just driving probably on their way home or on their way to work, you know, and not doing anything wrong, and someone just takes a red light and crashes into 2 cars. Dude, the video is intense. I mean, it is.
I saw it. It is
crazy,
and it's pretty. I mean, it's clear. It's incredible that people still think. I think that, you know, that, oh my God, if I walk away, maybe no one will notice, and maybe in like that panicked mindset, but. It's everything's recorded. I mean, if everything's on camera, I mean, it's just, it's laughable.
But if you're on this Tuesday pin cocaine, are you even thinking logically at that point in time? Clearly not. You're driving on it. Mm-hmm. Like the thing I always say is, before you arrive at a bar, you show up with a cafecito, and when you leave, you go with an Uber. Yeah, that's it, right? Always a cafecito to start the day and an Uber to end.
I love it.
It's not that tough.
I think I would take that advice to the bank. But I'll tell you, man, I think. But, you know, you look at, you know, we're not here really to comment on the case. You know, we're outside. We don't know what the discovery looks like, the proof that they're going to try to show against this woman. We don't know maybe some of the aggravating factors, some of the mitigating facts. I don't know. Right. But I think the important part here, and what I like about this kind of topic, is it really gives us an opportunity to speak to people that maybe, one, don't think it's that serious when you get behind the wheel of a car and you've been drinking. Or other things, you know, but I think, but let's play it practically, right? I think one of the things that we talked about is, you know, how everything is so expensive. So often, you know, I hear stories of people saying, hey, it wasn't that I was irresponsible. It was just that I wasn't willing to pay $100, $200, whatever the surge pricing for that, you know, ride share company is at that particular time. Let's say, especially when you're talking about Memorial Day, 4th of July, any weekends or hot spots, or, you know, Art Week, whatever. It doesn't matter what the event is. And, you know, they'll say, hey, you know, would I rather pay, you know, I'm like borderline. I think I might be okay to drive. You know, would I rather pay the $300 or just, you know, like, they don't even really think about risking it. Just like, hey, I'm okay. You start rationalizing it. And I think when you look at a case like this, you really realize it can happen to anybody.
No.
Even if you're not going, even if you don't run the red light, even if somebody else runs the red light, I think a lot of people don't understand that when you are intoxicated, and let's say they get a breath test, they get a blood test, whatever it may be, you could face consequences.
Right.
Even if that crash technically, maybe theoretically wasn't your fault. And I don't think enough people notice that or realize it or give it enough credit.
I mean, if you're in a crash, it's not your fault. It's clear as day. Someone took the red light, crashed into you, and like you said, you've had a few drinks or whatnot. Are the cops, because you're involved in a crash, even though they determine, okay, it wasn't your fault, someone else took the red light, that's simple as day. Do the cops still need your permission for a breathalyzer or a blood test, or because there was an incident involved, do they now have the right to do it even with or without your permission at that point?
Yeah, there's some laws in the state of Florida called implied consent laws.
Right.
And they really mandate that when there's an accident, and it's usually serious accidents, right? We're not talking a fender bender, but let's say someone is injured in the accident. And by someone, most people are surprised to realize that, including you as the driver, meaning like you could be the only one injured in the situation, and end up in a situation where they can take a blood test or compel a blood test against you. So they can. So a crash. So, it's never a good situation when you're in a crash. Right. I've had many, many cases where people come in, they've had a drink, maybe 2 drinks over the span of hours, and they were involved in a crash. And the police, say, hey, you smell like alcohol. Hey, you're stumbling. I was just in a crash. Of course I'm stumbling,
right?
Whatever. But I think that's a real concern. And, it's aprovechan.
Of course.
They take advantage. They're like, oh, well, now you're in a crash. And more importantly, when we say, like, when you're at fault, how many times have we been driving, have you or I or anybody else been driving, and in your opinion, you're not at fault, but, somehow you end up with the ticket.
Right.
So I mean, if we're talking about the legal definition of you went to court and a court determined you were at fault, that's one thing.
Right.
If we're talking about, who cried the bigger, crocodile tears to the cop, and the cop just wrote down, Alfredo Rubio caused this crash, even though, you were driving, at the speed limit and somebody cut you off, but because you hit them on the back part of their car, now you've
got to prove it.
So
with a dash cam.
So let me ask you that. So I think whenever I talk to, knowledgeable personal injury lawyers, they always tell me, hey, you definitely want a dash cam on your car. Are you a proponent, or do you say, hey, sometimes that evidence is going to be used against you? What do you think?
I mean, of course it can be used against you. I mean, I use it all the time against the truck drivers that crashed into my clients. Like, I didn't do it. I'm like, yeah, give me the video. I know you got one. Like, most commercial vehicles have a dash cam. And so we always ask for it, right? Yeah. Because a lot of times they're going to say, no, we didn't do it, or it was a little love tap. And then you look at the video and they smashed into my client's car, and I'm just like, but yes, I'm a proponent of it. I have one myself. I just, I drive carefully like I always do. That's just how I drive. And I feel like more often than not, and this is just a personal opinion, it's going to be to your benefit to have a dash cam. Can it be used as evidence in a case against you? Yeah, of course. I mean, we both know that. But it is what it is. And you have one, and more times than not, it's going to be used when someone decides to cut you off and slam on the brakes and then say that you rear-ended them. And now you've got the video to show, no, I did it. Yeah. Versus if you don't have that,
then it's really your word against theirs. And I know that on the highways, they have some cameras that might take some kind of photographs, but it's not, as I understand, it's not live video. We try to subpoena some of those every now and then. And
it's the same with the red light cameras, right? They don't stay on 24/7, and I've asked for them.
By the way, I got a bone to pick with those red light cameras. How can they possibly determine who's driving? Especially when most windows are tinted.
4K videos on.
No, but if you look at the videos, and because I've gotten caught a few times with the red light, not drinking, just a stoplight. But isn't that wild that they can issue you a traffic stop citation? Or not traffic citation, just because they took a photograph of your license plate. And it's funny, I've gone to these hearings arguing, fighting against it. You don't know who's there. The windows are blacked out.
Right.
Just because it's got a license plate, you can't show me. And their answer is always, these hearing officers that are the ones that generally use hear the cases will say something like, yeah, well, you can always get an affidavit from the person that was driving. Oh yeah, sure. Let somebody else incriminate themselves. It's just.
And that's the interesting part that I would that I would wonder, right? Like the red light cameras, they're not on 24/7. They don't record absolutely everything. But the moment someone takes a red light, they turn on, they do that little video, and then they turn right back off. So for anything like a crash, they're fucking useless unless you have a red light. For anything like what you're talking about, I guess that would be more your world is, do I need an affidavit? Meaning, does someone not have the Fifth Amendment rights, not incriminate themselves with this affidavit?
Well, it's not.
Or do they just say like, hey, it's your car, so unless you get someone else to admit it, we're just
basically
gonna blame you.
That's been my experience. And again, listen, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I don't often do traffic citations,
Right?
But yeah,
Except my own.
exactly. When I decide that I'm going to take a stand, but I will tell you, I mean, that's one thing. It really irks me. But I'll tell you, I really think it's important for people to hear stories like this one.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll tell you this, you know, and something that people, you know, I just one kind of maybe closing comment on this Macy Leathers thing. You know, this is a woman who's been in custody now for some time. And I think that's another factor that people don't consider when you're involved in an accident or an alleged crime. You know, sometimes, you know, sometimes you pay the bond, you get out and you deal with the case. Sometimes they hold you.
Right.
So can you imagine? I mean, this case happened in 2024 and she's in custody. So we're talking almost 2 years. I don't remember exactly what month it happened.
It was
maybe
August of 2024. And last that I heard, she's still in custody, still awaiting a trial.
Yeah.
I know they've had hearings recently. As of April, they had some hearings going on in there. So the case is very much still active on the criminal side of things. And she's been in jail for nearly 2 years. Yeah. You know, retained in there. And it kind of wonders, like, hey guys, it's not like the movies, right?
Yeah,
it's not.
You're not in trial. You're not. It's not like My Cousin Vinny. You're in trial for a capital murder case in
a tiny little county like My Cousin Vinny, but it's not like that. You know, you don't just go in and go out. And obviously, it's, you know, everybody's got to do their due diligence on the criminal side and defend them, and I get that, and that's 100% what they're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, the right to speedy trial does not mean you're out in a week.
No,
and that's the problem.
And I'll tell you, I think that's where a lot of people are like, what? I don't get to go home immediately. Yeah, the state can move to keep you in, and it's really, I mean, it's not a picnic. It's not easy.
No.
And not only that, but let's say you can be out on bond, which I believe is what happened in this case. You can be given a bond, and then let's say the state upgrades the charges. It's a whole new consideration of bond. And in this particular case, I can imagine that, for example, you're talking about leaving the scene of the accident and that accusation, you know, that probably played a bit into the, you know, into the argument against bond. And now as a result, you're now, you know, I'm sure there was other things that took into account for that. But now they're essentially, you know, still in custody pending this trial. So, yeah. So my advice from a criminal defense lawyer, and I'm sure Alfredo would tell you the same, do not drink and get behind the wheel of a car. I don't care if it's 1 drink, 2 drinks. Is that ride share, you know, cost gonna maybe eat you up inside that you just paid $100 to go 3 miles down the road? Maybe, but it's much better than dealing with a situation where you can end up in custody for a long time and those horrible consequences.
But what's these rideshare prices that you're talking about? I know that there's surge for weekends, for times, for events. Look, we got the World Cup coming up. Miami's obviously a hot spot for like.
What a nightmare that's going to be. As much as I love World Cup.
I mean, but regardless of it being a nightmare, right? Like, let's say you want to go to a World Cup event. I'm sure Bayfront's going to have a bunch of events. Bars will have free viewings or whatever. Like they always do. You don't always have to pay to go to the game. But even if you go to Bayfront, let's say you want to go to Bayfront, you want to go to one of these festivals, they're going to have a viewing party, whatever. They put up the big projectors like they always do. How much is parking going to be? That's number one that I always think of. Second, I think of is how bad is the traffic going to be getting in and out of there? Meaning the parking lot's going to be a gridlock. It's going to be insane. So the amount of money that you're realistically going to spend on your gas, your time, and the parking, probably the same as an Uber, even with the surge charge. And that's where I think about it. So even if I spend an extra, let's say I spend $20 more overall on Uber, $30 more, yeah, that's worth the peace of mind. So I can go have a few beers, have a good time, and then go home, and I'm good.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, God willing, something doesn't happen on the way to an accident. But as far as that, I'm not driving. I'm not the responsible party. I am taking Uber, going home, being
and you
safe.
can enjoy the day without having to worry about it, without having to worry about how you get there or get back.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, Miami does have public transportation. Is it the best public transportation system in the world?
Well, it depends where you live, right? If you're downtown, the Metro Uber is not too shabby.
I agree.
It's always worth, I think, and I'm sure you agree with me, if you're going to be drinking, especially, don't be doing drugs. We know that. But if you're going to be drinking, going to an event, like we just talked about, the World Cup coming up, with all the traffic, the cost of parking in this city where you're going, the Uber is worth it, not only because financially it's usually, in my opinion, going to be probably about the same as the driving and the parking, but on top of that, for your own like sense of freedom of enjoying the event and being able to have a couple beers with some friends and just relax, or a glass of wine, whatever it is. That's I would say
planning
that.
Like literally just plan. A little bit of planning goes a long way. I agree.
100%. So I mean, I think it's a good spot to end it here, guys. We appreciate you coming. Thank you for watching episode 2. Episode 3 will come in about a week as usual. We're doing these, I say, weekly, fairly weekly. And if there's anything you guys want to talk about, something new that's popping up, any events, anything Miami specific, any restaurants you want us to try, especially that one.
Forget all the other requests. That is what I want.
Well, we'll answer your legal questions, but more importantly, if there's a place you want us to try and give our humble opinion on, we are always happy to try. I know there's new restaurants popping up. I'm actually going to look into some of those, see if we talk about that later on. But again, thanks for coming, guys, and we'll see you around next time.